right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, a Phil Heath story. You guys might have seen the latest physique update from Phil, his latest training clip on his Instagram. He has in the caption, quote, "Got a different type of body built. LFG, finished the week strong." So it's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride with Phil. Obviously, towards the end of last year, towards the end of 2021, and we saw what appeared to be, and what Phil admitted was a much downsized version of himself, but we found out that it was because he was hospitalized with the virus and had a pretty severe case, and that was the cause of the weight loss. It wasn't an intentional move for him to downsize, or potentially because he's not competing or not planning a comeback or whatever. And pretty much ever since that period of time where we saw a smaller version of Phil, he's been posting updates where he looks really a lot more like his usual self, a lot more like almost a competitive off-season version of Phil. It's also worth mentioning that we haven't seen Phil on a competitive stage in almost 2 years. The 2020 Mr. Olympia was the last time we saw him compete. And of course, as you guys know, that was the only Olympia that he hasn't won. Or I guess I should even say that's the only Olympia that he hasn't placed within the top two since all the way back in 2009, where he placed fifth. I mean, even in 2010, before he won his first Olympia, he was second to Jay Cutler. So he hasn't been outside of the top two, with the exception of 2020, since 2008. And of course, Phil has never announced a formal retirement. So there's a lot of speculation. He's looking good in all these updates. He looks like he's holding on to a pretty fair amount of size. Is he going to compete again? And what show would that be? What I can tell you guys is there was interest in Phil doing commentary at this past year's Arnold, so the 2022 Arnold Classic. And what I can also tell you guys is that they are also interested in 2023 having Phil involved, but I know they're interested to the extent that they want him to compete. I would probably even go as far to say is they would send him an invitation if he expressed interest, or if he was receptive to this idea. You know, I don't know how Phil feels about it, and I don't know if he's been receptive to the idea of him competing at the Arnold to any extent, but I do know that they're interested in having him compete there. And personally, I don't know if we would see Phil do the Olympia again. If he knows maybe he's going to do one or two more shows before he retires, he probably wants that last show to go out with a bang. And realistically, do we think Phil would win the Olympia again? I don't know. But I would say he has a much higher chance of winning a show like the Arnold Classic, which would be a nice cap to his career if he didn't do the Olympia again. Think about it. He's got 7 Olympia titles. Even if he doesn't get 8, with 7, who is he tied with? Who's the only bodybuilder that he's tied with? Arnold Schwarzenegger. What's the only show that he hasn't won yet? At least the Arnold Classic USA, I should say. He hasn't won that title. He came close in 2010. Some people say it was the best physique he ever had, where he was second to Kai Green that year at the Arnold. But it's a title that's eluded him pretty much his entire career. But to me, at least, the way that Phil looks now would suggest that maybe in his mind he's not done with competing. I genuinely think he was going to compete in Athleticon, obviously before the pandemic hit and that got shut down. I think that probably was the plan. And who really knows what the future holds with that show and if that's ever going to happen. Because a lot of the premise of that event, Athleticon, was to be like a gigantic expo with a lot of people, a lot of sports, a lot of events in one place, and to be a bigger expo than the Arnold, which I don't know how realistic that model is going forward. But what I think would be cool, if he does compete again, I think he should do the Arnold. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think Phil's going to compete again? How do you think he's looking in this update? If he did the Olympia, do you think he'd win? If he did the Arnold, do you think he'd win? Which would you rather see him do, and which do you think he has better odds of winning? Let me know. Now, next up in the news, I thought this was pretty cool. So Terrence Ruffin, Ruff Diesel, you guys all know him, runner-up at the Olympia, 2-time now Arnold Classic champion and Classic Physique. He was doing a Q&A, and a lot of interesting stories, seems like a lot of interesting stories lately are coming from the Q&As that these bodybuilders are doing on their stories, but he said, he was asked the question, is there anyone in Classic Physique coming up right now that you see being at the top in the future? And he goes on to name 2 guys, Horse MD, aka Marcelo De Angelis, and Fabian Larabia. And I agree 100% with these 2 picks. Neither of these guys have competed at the Olympia yet. Fabian has qualified, but he wasn't able to make it. So Fabian at least has won a show and gotten to the Olympia. And of course, Horse MD just earned his pro card. He earned it in bodybuilding, mind you, but he decided to do Classic Physique as a pro. I'll put up a picture of them side by side, a front double bicep shot. On the left is the latest picture from Fabian Larrabia, who is, I believe, 9 weeks out right now. And he is preparing for the Puerto Rico Pro, where he hopes to earn another qualification for the Olympia. And on the right-hand side, of course, is Horse MD. Now, this is a photo from his last prep, even though he posted it recently. It's not recent. He's not competing this weekend at the Arnold Classic Brazil. They're not having a classic physique category, just men's open pro bodybuilding. I think he is getting ready for a show this summer, but I don't think he's announced it yet, and I think he's still pretty far out. Maybe 9 weeks. Maybe it is similar distance as Fabian. But these guys are incredible, and as far as getting that cosign from a guy like Ruff Diesel, he's at the top right now. These are the guys that he's saying, this is who I'm looking at. This is who I think I'm going to be on stage next to, possibly this year at the Olympia. I think that's a good call, definitely with Horse MD. Marcelo, I think, is one of the best talents in classic physique right now, even though he hasn't competed in that division yet. Again, he turned pro as a bodybuilder, which the main point of me saying that is that he didn't have to meet a weight requirement when he turned pro. So we're going to see how his physique looks in classic with that weight requirement, which I believe he's only a couple of kilos away from that limit. So he's going to have to come down a little bit, but not a lot. And while Marcelo, as you can see in these pictures, has more size, apparently, than Fabian, Fabian has really, really great flow to his physique. He's got a really great structure. I do think he could fill it out a little bit more, but I think Ruff Diesel is right on the money here, and Horse MD actually reposted this, and this was his response. He was flattered. He says, "Thank you, bro. You are the inspiration, not just at Classic, but for all categories. I hope to meet you this year." And maybe they will. Maybe they will meet on the Olympia stage in 2022. Now, speaking of Brazil, I hadn't showed you guys this video yet of Sibusiso Kotello. So I've been looking a little bit closer at some of the guys that are doing this Arnold Classic Brazil because a lot of these names are so new to us, and the announcement of the competitor list was so new to us. So this is a video of him posing. I believe this was from this week. This was peak week. I hadn't talked about it yet in a video, and you can really see one of the things that I've really stressed with Sibusiso's, with his physique, was the fact that he's got really great aesthetics. I mean, for a men's open guy, he's got a really good flow to his physique. He's got a really good structure. I think his lat insertions, well, it looks really crazy when you see him from the back. I think his lat insertions are high, and that, I think, contributes to the crazy V-taper that he does have. But, man, honestly, the more that I see of some of these guys that are doing this show, the more excited I am to see some of these guys on stage and the potential of some of these guys that we might not be as familiar with getting their ticket to the Olympia if somebody other than Raphael is able to win this show. And we talked, of course, about William Martins, who I think is fantastic as well. Emir Omaragic, who I think is fantastic as well. But, out of the guys that I've seen so far, Sibusiso he's really caught my eye, and he's really a guy that I think is going to push Raphael. I think this guy's the real deal. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how he compares from a size standpoint. Like I said, you can really easily see shape and flow and aesthetics and structure. You can see that on Instagram, but you don't really know how they compare from a size standpoint until you actually see them on stage together next to each other. That's the real definitive deciding factor. Now, looking a little bit further out, speaking of someone that's impressed me a lot, Charles Griffin getting ready for the Indy Pro. We're 2 weeks away now from that show. It's coming up very quickly. It seems like just yesterday we were saying we're 9 weeks away. We're 6 weeks away. 2 weeks away. He posted a recent update, I think within the last day, of his back. And I gotta say exactly what I said about him in the last video. The more that I've seen from Charles Griffin, especially during these, really close to the show weeks, I think we're looking at the best version of Charles Griffin that we've ever seen. I don't know if we're looking at the best version of Justin we've ever seen. I think he looked pretty damn good in Boston. I think he looked pretty damn good at the Arnold Classic prejudging. Maybe the Arnold Classic prejudging was the best version of Justin that we've ever seen. I don't think we've seen the best version of Blessing that we've ever seen yet. But I'm looking at Charles, and I think this is the best his physique has ever looked to me at this point in a prep. I think we're going to see something spectacular from him at the Indy Pro, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. I really do. He's dense. He's grainy. He's got size. He's been working on his midsection. He does vacuum poses. He's got, he's tightened up his waist a little bit. I'm extremely curious to see how this all shakes out and where he lands in that lineup. And similar to Sibusiso, and that's why I'm talking about him in this video, I wouldn't be surprised if Charles is in the conversation for top two. And I'm thinking right now it'll probably be between him and Justin. So kind of my tentative predictions right now are South America, the Arnold Classic Brazil. I think that's going to be between Raphael and likely Sibusiso. And then Indy, I think, is likely going to be between Justin Rodriguez, who's the returning champion, and Charles Griffin here. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. That's going to wrap it up for the video. As always, I love you guys, man. I appreciate you guys. Make sure you like the video. Give it a thumbs up. It really helps out when you like the videos. If you're enjoying them, show that you enjoy them by liking them. Leave a comment, subscribe, click the bell notification. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out.